Hello everyone, my name's Captain Smeggery of the 6th NG, and today I'm going to be going over what I hope will be a short but informative Task Force radio tutorial. So without further ado, let's go ahead and walk over to the radios. Here we are at the radios. So this tutorial is going to be split off into two sections. One is short range radios, the other will be long range radios, and as you can see on this table, don't know why there's a Glock 17 there, but we have a ANPRC 152. For the long range radio, which wouldn't go on the table for some reason, we have this, which is an RT 1523G. So let's get right into section 1. Once you've got your radio in your inventory, you can see I have mine somewhere. Down here, sorry. ANPRC 1521. Personal radio, 5 kilometer range is what it says. So first things, when you've got your radio in your inventory ready to go, you want to go ahead and press Control and P. Control P. And that will bring up your radio. You can see that now, my Hathis radio here, Falcon 3. This is the radio in my inventory. So let's start this off. First thing you want to do when you get up your radio, I'm assuming for this whole tutorial that you are doing this as part of a Arma 3 group, clan, something like that, because that tends to be the only times you'll ever use Task Force radio. So first thing you want to do is agree a frequency. So if you're doing it as part of a MilSim group, you'll have frequencies between your fire team, you'll have frequencies between different squads, you'll have frequencies with the Zeus and High Command. But let's say, just for simplicity, this is your fire team. So say you decide on 50.5, I think that's a good number, let's go with that. What I want to do is press set frequency down here. This little button, that just means now C1 is set to 50.5. So first things first, for the keypad, these 9 keys here, this group of 9 keys is completely useless. You can just completely forget any of them even exist. Don't need them. They are useless. These ones along the edge, these are the ones you need. So clear frequency just gets rid of that. I'll quickly put that back in. These two are pretty self-explanatory. Set frequency 50.5, perfect. That is now the set frequency. So next and previous channel, you can see that just changes the C, C1, C2, C3 up to C8. So what this will allow me to do is put C2 as, say I agreed that between fire teams, so not within my fire team, but with the next fire team we were going to talk over, let's do 60.5 for simplicity. Then next and previous channel, that would allow me to quickly switch between talking to my fire team and talking to the other fire team. Now another quick way of doing this is, even with the radio away, I can use numpad, and you'll see down on the bottom right of my screen, channel 1 is when I press 1, channel 2 when I press 2, frequency 50.5, frequency 60.5. So that is all perfect. Pressing Control P again to bring that up. So this next one is a pretty cool little feature. So speakers, you'll notice in the bottom right I can switch between speakers and headphones. Now what this allows me to do is, headphones mean only I can hear what's coming out of my radio, but if I put this on speaker mode, it means that if someone is close enough next to me, so let's see if there's anyone quite close near me. So say I went and walked over towards this guy. Now if someone were to talk to me over my radio, I'm stopped walking forward now, there we go. If someone were to talk to me over my radio, this guy would then also hear it. So effectively what it means is, obviously it's kind of self-explanatory, it comes out the headphones, or not the headphones, the radio speakers. But I'm going to leave it on headphones because that's how I have it defaulted. So setting additional channel, now this is actually quite important. So using the analogy I used before, if I want to talk between fire teams and I'm using channel 2, and I want to talk to my fire team using channel 1, what I can go ahead and do is press next channel, press set additional channel. You'll notice the C for channel changes to A because it's now an additional channel. And what this will do is, if I'm back on C1 in the bottom right, you can see at the bottom additional channel 2. Now what this means is, when I'm talking and listening on channel 1, I can then also be listening to incoming radio calls on channel 2, and then that will then immediately tell me, okay, I need to reply to that, so I can switch to channel 2 and I can reply to that. So effectively what it does is just adds in the ability to also hear channel 2 when I'm talking and listening on channel 1. So that's very useful for doing actual MilSim events and stuff. In fact, it's pretty much necessary. So final button for this short range radio. This is my stereo settings, and this again ties in with the additional channels. So say I wanted channel 2, say channel 2 was my officer, the person in charge of me, and so I had to be listening to commands over channel 2. What I can go ahead and do is press next channel, stereo settings, and in the bottom right again you'll see left and right, sorry, it's under additional because this is for channel 2, so left only, right only, and left and right. So below the bit that just says left and right. So say I wanted to hear my commands from my officer through my left ear, I could go ahead and change stereo settings so it's left only. Now this will mean if I've got my headphones, which I do, my actual real headphones, on stereo, which any modern headset should do, even like listening earphones or anything, they'll all be stereo. What that means is when I get a call on channel 2, when someone radio calls on channel 2, I will only hear it through my left headphone. Then say I want to then hear my squad replying to me through my right, I can go ahead and go left only, right only. There you go, so now it's right only and then additional left only. So this means my squad will come through my right ear and my command will come through my left. So that is a basic tutorial for how to set up your radio. There's also volume at the top. Notice my volume's on 80, left clicking will put my volume down by 10, right clicking will put my volume up by 10. But that's all very basic stuff, that's just this control at the top. So pressing escape now. How to use the radio is fairly self-explanatory. Hold caps lock. You'll notice in the bottom left it says transmitting, radio ANPRC 1521, channel 1, frequency 50.5. Now while I'm transmitting, while I'm talking, I have to be constantly holding caps lock. It's not just pressing it. You'll notice when I release it, bottom right it says transmitted in orange. I'll show you that again. Transmitting in green while I'm holding it. Release the button, transmitted in orange. So basically while I'm sending my message I have to hold caps lock. When I receive a message, should it be on channel 1, I can then instantly go ahead and hold caps lock and reply to that on channel 1. Should I hear a message out of my channel 2 ear, if I were to reply holding caps lock, I would just end up replying to channel 1 again. So the only function of additional channels is to be able to hear and know when to switch to that other channel. So if I heard an incoming message on channel 2, I would switch to channel 2. You'll notice now bottom right it says I'm on channel 2, 60.5. Then were I to hold caps lock, I could then go ahead and talk on 60.5. So that concludes my tutorial on the short range section. You can see my long range radio down here, and I will see you guys in 1 second for the long range part of this tutorial. Okay, so time for part 2 of this tutorial. Now I've picked up my long range back there. Go into my inventory again, you can see somewhere up here in my backpack slot, that's where it's taken up, RT1523G. Now this is the radio I'm going to be using for this tutorial, but there is a whole host of different long range and short range radios that you can be using if you'd prefer. Luckily though, most of them work in exactly the same way, so this tutorial will carry over with other radios. So without further ado, to bring up your radio, same as we did with the short range, instead of Control P this time, you'll notice I still have my short range, so Control P still brings that up, and then Escape gets rid of it. What you actually want to do is you want to go ahead and press Alt P. Now this, you'll notice, brings up this big box. It's obviously a much longer range radio, you can see by the size of it alone. And luckily for this tutorial, a lot of these things work in the same way. So you can no longer use your numpad to switch between channels. You'll notice in the bottom right, that's still doing it on my short range. But what you can do is use control and numpad, and that will switch between long range channels. So you'll notice now holding control, pressing 1 will bring it onto channel 1, 2, channel 2, 3, channel 3, all the way up to channel 9. So this also then has one more channel than the previous radio. This has 9 channels instead of 8. Now, first of all, reasons you'd want to use a long range radio instead of a short range is the fact that if I actually press escape and go onto my map, it's quite hard to get a sense of scale, but if I had to guess, I would say a short range would work about that distance. I'm here, by the way. I'll put a big thing. I'll put it in red. Perfect. That's where I am. I reckon a short range would work to there, but it would become incredibly crackly about there. And so the difference between this is then, say you had squads, say you were attacking somewhere like Karshek or Chadadara, you had squads pushing in from the south. That was a terrible arrow. Let's just redo that. So you had squads pushing in from the south and the east. You'll notice that's the furthest part, sorry, the south and the west, they're the furthest parts away from the town, or from, sorry, start that again, they're the furthest parts away from where I am, and you'll notice they're far out of short range. However, if I was in command of this whole operation around Karshek, I would have to be in command of squads possibly as far away as the southernmost points of this map, so like Tal Gazar and South Dara Desert. And obviously, looking at the rough ranges I've drawn out here for the short range, it's just not going to cut it. It's not going to be good enough. However, the long range has a far further range, and is probably something along the lines of the entire map, I would say. And so that's the main reason for using the long range, is just the fact that it has a far superior range, and obviously that's why it's called a long range radio. So, sorry, wrong radio, bringing back up Alt-P, using that to bring back up my radio, going to channel 1. So as I was saying, luckily for us a lot of this is the same, so if I use 30 as my channel, I can go set frequency. There doesn't appear to be a clear frequency. Oh, there is, sorry, down here, bottom left. Clear frequency obviously does the same, 30, put in that again, set frequency. Now, unlike the other radio, these buttons, the number buttons, actually do work, so I can switch between the channels using these. So that's the only real difference, but in actual fact it's not really a problem. So I have the same thing with additional channels, so if I press Control 2, I can bring up channel 2. Now, say the last one was 30, say this was 31, set frequency. Then set additional channels, you'll notice the H becomes an A. Now this becomes additional channel 2. And if I go back to channel 1, you'll notice in the bottom right, additional long range channel 2. So increase volume, that's fine. I can increase, I can decrease as well. I'll have it quite loud. Now speakers with a long range, I'm gonna go back to stereo because it's like the same. So same with everything here, but speakers with a long range is no different to speakers with a short range. However, it is much more useful. It's got a much larger use because very often in a squad there will only be one person with a long range radio. You should most likely, unless you're doing say like a World War II operation or something, where there would only be one radio per squad, or I did it with a Vietnam unit once, and we only had one long range radio and no short ranges. But for any modern, even Cold War operations, Cold War to present day, the entire squad at least should have a short range radio, but only one person would likely have a long range radio, and they would be your radio operator. So speakers then becomes far more useful, because if other people in the squad then want to be able to hear the message without having to have it passed on second hand from the radio operator, then obviously they have to be able to hear it as well. So then by putting on speakers, with the volume up, you can then allow the rest of your squad to hear the long range radio calls as well. So stereo is the same again, as I was saying, left and right, left only, right only, and that is for channel 1, go into my additional channel. I could do left only, right only, center, so if I put it on left only, that's fine. And then same again, press escape. So that is the configuration of a long range radio. You'll notice it's incredibly similar to a short range radio, and honestly knowing how a short range radio works effectively tells you how a long range works and vice versa. There isn't really any difference apart from the fact that a long range is range. Now you'll notice how I was saying before, I still have my short range radio as well as my long range radio, and you're probably wondering, well, how do you then transmit over your long range if your transmit button is going to do your short range? And you're right, if I hold caps lock, it still does my short range. So as with a lot of the other hotkeys, control and then the button is actually what does it for this. So you'll notice, apart from control P being switched with alt P, things like control and then numpad is how you switch between channels. And in this case it's also holding control and then caps lock will then transmit over your long range. So basically when you're using your long range you can effectively hold control the whole time, because say I was receiving a message on channel 2, my additional channel, I could then hold control, press 2, that'll switch to my additional channel, and then while still holding control I can then transmit. And you'll notice in the bottom right, exactly the same as the short range, channel 2 transmitting, let go of caps lock, transmitted. If I'm holding caps lock and then let go of the control button, it will just transmit the rest over my short range. So you have to be careful, let go of your caps lock before you let go of the control key, otherwise you will transmit over your short range radio. That concludes the long range section, and that also then concludes this entire tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other suggested tutorials that you would like, even things like coding, you'll notice I have guys sitting down, guys walking around the base. I'm considering starting a series where I build certain missions and build certain bases, and you guys can see me do that. Got a medic station over there and stuff. That I would be interested in that. If you have any other suggestions for different tutorials on any aspects of Arma 3, I'm fairly versed in the entire game, having owned it for a number of years with over 1,000 hours. I can most likely deliver a fairly good tutorial on any aspect of the game. So leave a comment if you'd like any different tutorials. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment on anything you really want, as long as it's appropriate. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Captain Smegger of the 6th NG, signing out.